The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
I want to start today's show with a question. That question is, why now, President Obama? And what I mean is, for the last nearly 8 years at this point, 8 years on January 20th, 2017, I've criticized President Obama when he's deserved criticism. I've praised President Obama when he has deserved praise. And today I need to criticize him, not because he said something I disagree with, not because his administration said something I disagree with, but because once again, he waited until he had mere days left in his presidency before saying something that he should have said a very, very long time ago. I reported to you a couple of weeks ago that very casually during one of his final appearances before leaving the White House, President Obama said, yeah, weed should be legal, marijuana should be treated like alcohol or cigarettes. And my reaction was, well, yeah, but why not say something earlier in your presidency when it would have had such a major impact on the legalization drive that we are seeing, particularly, I mean, most acutely necessary now, because we have incoming Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who will no doubt try to undo the progress that has been made with regard to marijuana decriminalization and legalization. And there were a number of understandable explanations as to why President Obama waited. You know, you have to weigh the political reality at the time. And 7.5 years ago, if President Obama would have said, hey, weed should be legal just like cigarettes and alcohol, could have been politically risky. It could have backfired and hurt President Obama's ability to get other significant legislation passed. I get that. I don't like it. I hate that this is where politics is, but at least I understand it conceptually. Okay. But now we have yet another example of this. President Obama and his administration, through a new report, have said what I criticized Donald Trump for not saying during the 2016 presidential campaign, what Hillary Clinton didn't say during the 2016 presidential campaign. I must have pointed it out, must have been 50 times or more, that the real threat to jobs in America in the next 15 to 20 years is not China. It's not Mexico. It is artificial intelligence, automation, and robots taking our jobs. The administration put out a report, a good report, a report I agree with, a report that I think is incredibly necessary right now, that says, it's called Preparing for the Future of Artificial Intelligence. And it says that driving jobs and house cleaning jobs and so many part-time jobs, for example, just in the transportation world, this report from the White House, from the Obama White House, says that somewhere between 2.2 and 3.1 million jobs will be threatened, altered, or eliminated because of autonomous technology. And that's just in the driving and transportation world, similar to the numbers I've talked to you about. I have been arguing that a paradigm shift is completely necessary if we really want to be prepared in a reasonable manner for the change that is inevitable to our economic reality. We need to be thinking not about, can Trump bring jobs back from China and Mexico that his companies were partially responsible for sending over in the first place, that by and large don't even exist anymore. That is not the right approach. That's a distraction that may appeal to Trumpists who believe that America is going to be made great again by that type of rhetoric, but that's not the right conversation. We need to rethink and totally restructure education. We need a better social safety net for displaced workers. And maybe that means, and I've been talking about this for a long time, moving away from individual means-tested social welfare programs, each with their own extremely significant bureaucracy apparatuses, apparati. I actually don't know what the right plural is there. Sounding like a Hatriot today. But maybe we need to look at a basic income that is not means tested. It can eliminate all of that bureaucracy in food stamps and Social Security, all these different areas. And we're sort of going in the opposite direction with the Trump administration, where a lot of the welfare programs that should probably be consolidated and expanded under the coming automation revolution, a lot of those programs are under the chopping block in the incoming Donald Trump administration. It's also not just artificial intelligence and not just in the industries that the Obama report mentions. If you look at 1950s science fiction, 1950s science fiction is increasingly relevant in thinking about what the 2025 or 2030 reality could be. You have the utopian 1950s science fiction, and then you have the dystopian 1950s science fiction. And I call it 1950s, but 60s, 70s, 80s, there's been plenty written. We have the utopia under robots, right? Which is robots and artificial intelligence and machines make us free to continue to reduce scarcity when it comes to basic needs like food and housing and just basic even medications, etc. And humans can focus on being productive in new ways to society, right? Improving thinking, improving innovation, working on new problems, really digging into climate change and its impacts. Or they could also just do nothing and still live and contribute to society, or just be parents or whatever they want to do. On the other hand, we have the dystopian version of automation and robots and artificial reality, which is we continue to exist in the same paradigm of crony vulture capitalism, and the automation revolution leads to the destruction of jobs with no paradigm shift about our relationship to work, increased poverty, certainly increased inequality, and probably even more problems. It could go either way. I like the report from the Obama administration, but why now? This should have been discussed for a very, very long time. Let's follow up on the situation in North Carolina with this transgender bathroom bill, HB2. Here is the backstory. Some time ago, the North Carolina legislature passed a bill called HB2. That bill not only mandated that individuals must use the bathroom that corresponds with their birth genitalia, it also mandated that you cannot have municipality level non-discrimination ordinances with regard to sexual orientation or gender identity. There was this backroom deal made where Charlotte agreed to rescind their non-discrimination ordinance, and in exchange, Pat McCrory, the Republican governor, agreed, and the Republicans in the North Carolina legislature agreed, okay, Charlotte has rescinded what caused us to pass HB2 in the first place. We will get together and talk about repealing HB2. It was all expected to happen smoothly. Even outgoing and disgraced Republican Governor Pat McCrory, one of the most deplorable governors in the country, along with Sam Brown back in Kansas and Snyder in Michigan, and quite a long list of other deplorables. One of the top Republican deplorables agreed, we're going to talk about this. It's been a disaster for the state. Businesses have been pulling jobs out. Organizations have been pulling events out of North Carolina. Pat McCrory losing his re-election campaign narrowly and arguably, at least in part, because of the uproar against HB2. Well, the entire repeal has absolutely and utterly and embarrassingly imploded. It's not going to happen for at least 6 months. The General Assembly started a special session yesterday. They ended it after 9 hours with HB2 still on the books. And Charlotte did its part on Monday, right? They rescinded the law that was the catalyst for HB2. McCrory, I'm not a defender of Pat McCrory, but the special session was called just like Pat McCrory said it would happen. But instead of a repeal, the special session ended with Senator Phil Berger, the Republican leader in the House there, putting in a measure to start a, quote, 6-month cooling off period, during which nobody can make any changes to ordinances of this type, these non-discrimination ordinances, to ordinances relating to employment discrimination and public accommodations. So this means that at minimum, HB2 remains in effect for 6 more months. And the General Assembly claims that they're going to take these 6 months to start working on what they call a long-range solution to the issues. Obviously, it's unclear what their definition of a solution even is, but the broader concern, and Democrats in the North Carolina legislature have voiced this concern, these cooling off periods could be extended indefinitely. We're going to have a 6-month cooling off period, and in 6 months, we're going to have another 6-month cooling off period. Now, that may not happen for a couple of reasons, and I'll talk about why. Number one, there's the background hope that when the new Democratic governor, Roy Cooper, is sworn in, that he will end this nonsense and push for statewide protections for sexual orientation as well as gender identity, and end the retrograde insanity. That's the hope, and we'll see if that happens. In the meantime, though, we have to understand that the business impact, the financial impact of HB2, events pulling out of North Carolina, businesses choosing to expand in other states rather than in North Carolina, that's what has caused a lot of the uproar and the discussion about whether HB2 needs to go. Businesses need to continue putting pressure on the state, continue to pull jobs out, continue to pull events, keep doing it. And you have to remember, there are still many Republicans in the North Carolina legislature who absolutely don't want this repealed. They are only even willing to consider it because of the financial impact, and they're hearing from constituents. When businesses pull out, their constituents lose jobs, and that is what is influencing them, and you have to keep the pressure up. This from the beginning was this backroom deal in exchange for repealing the Charlotte non-discrimination ordinance. This isn't about Republicans seeing the light about how much of a disaster this bill is. It is financial, and we need to keep the financial pressure up, and hopefully, I mean, at this point, who really knows? Hopefully 6 months is it, and then HB2 will be gone. We'll continue following it into 2017. There's a Times article, Times Magazine article by Jesse Ferguson, which points out quite eloquently something that I've been saying for, I guess since November 9th, the day after the November 8th presidential election, which is President-elect Donald Trump has the biggest non-mandate of any recent president, not by a little bit, but by a very, very long shot. Recall that Donald Trump won the electoral vote because of just under 60,000 votes across 3 states. Trump, although he is using the word major win, mandate, etc., Trump won with fewer electoral votes than Barack Obama in 2012, and actually way, way, way fewer electoral votes than Barack Obama in 2008. And recall that even President Obama's overwhelming electoral vote win in 2008 wasn't enough for them to get together the day after it was either the day after the election or the day after the inauguration of President Obama to his first term, to say we are going to obstruct by any means necessary. If obstruction made sense after that overwhelming win, then progressives absolutely need to get together to prevent the Donald Trump agenda, which we're increasingly learning about as a globalist, pro-oligarch agenda. They need to get together. And so in addition to Trump's meager electoral vote win. Remember that almost 3 million more people voted for Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by a bigger margin than John F. Kennedy in his 1960 presidential win, by a bigger margin than Richard Nixon in his 1968 presidential win. And in addition to this, we have the CIA and the FBI agreeing at this point on the assessment that Russian hacking at the direction of Russian President Vladimir Putin intervened to help the election in favor of Donald Trump and against Hillary Clinton. Even if you don't believe that part, and I know that there are skeptics who don't necessarily agree with that assessment of the FBI and CIA right now, forget about that and consider the reality that Donald Trump, aside from Russian hacking, has the largest non-mandate we've seen in a long time. And also, even if you look at the congressional level, yes, Republicans control Congress, there's no doubt about it. Despite, though, what should be illegal gerrymandering in congressional districts, which makes it so difficult, as I've told you before, for Democrats to take control of the House, Democrats still manage to pick up 6 seats in the House. Trumpists will hear me talking about this, though, and they'll say, David, this is sour grapes. You guys lost. Make America great again. You're a cuck, etc., blah, blah, blah. This conversation isn't for the Trumpists. I know that they are there, but this conversation is for the sane and reasonable progressives in our audience. There is a basis here, a factual basis for doing everything we can to stop Donald Trump from carrying out his harebrained ideas, and Republicans depend on progressives internalizing, oh, Trump crushed us, he slaughtered us, he won a mandate, and now we have no choice but to let the Republicans do whatever they want for 4 years or potentially for 8 years. That is only going to be the case if progressives allow it to be the case. Can't fall victim to that. Can't fall victim to what Republicans are trying to do. A majority of Americans rejected the agenda of the current Republican regime. Trump talks about a mandate. Trump's transition team member, Sean Spicer, is all over corporate media touting a mandate that does not exist. Republicans won the right to govern, but there is no mandate for their policies, and in fact, it's quite the opposite. Their platform was by and large rejected by voters across the country. We recognize this. I recognize this, and we recognize the urgency and the need for progressives to coordinate and organize, and that's why we're running a $60,000 crowd-funded fundraiser right now, which I'll talk about later, I've talked about before. Reminder though, davidpakman.com/donate is the place to learn more about that. I'm gonna take a break. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. Talk to me about what we see as the biggest non-mandate for a president in a very, very long time. On Twitter at @dpakman.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Derek France. Derek, thank you so much for being a David Pakman Show member. We have so much to get to that I won't spend too much time talking about membership, but it is how the program is funded. If you value what we do, I'm thrilled to offer the program, as we always have, for free, but that production is subsidized by membership. So please consider signing up at davidpakman.com/membership. If you want a discount, you can use the coupon code IVoted17. And of course, we do have the fundraiser happening at davidpakman.com/donate. And we also have a system set up. If you ever shop on Amazon, you go to davidpakman.com/Amazon, and then any Amazon shopping you do will support the work that we do. The Reddit discussion forum continues to grow, davidpakman.com/Reddit. We now are up to, at latest check, over 2,100 viewers and listeners that are regularly engaging in discussion with me. Pat is on the David Pakman Show Reddit discussion forum. I wanted to go through just a few of the interesting conversations and posts over the last few days at davidpakman.com/Reddit that I hope you will jump in on. Number one, a user named Plea2K16 asked, why are so many alt-righters afraid to express their views? I don't agree that they are. I believe that alt-righters are incredibly comfortable expressing their views, as we've seen in so many different venues and across multiple platforms during the 2016 campaign. And if anything, they've been emboldened by the election of President Donald Trump. I disagree with the premise. Another discussion from our Reddit discussion forum. Is Hillary Clinton going to do some confessions? This user says it seems to be so that Hillary Clinton has lost most reasons to be extra careful in statements and interviews. She can speak more freely, at least when the topic does not involve classified or top secret information. Maybe she has some explosive confessions and revelations to give, something with magnitude similar to revealing that she is an atheist, or that she used to smoke pot, or that she once snorted cocaine. Yeah, I don't know that I see that happening. I think it's an interesting idea that now that, by all indications, Hillary Clinton's political career is starting to wrap up beyond, I don't know, maybe involvement in a potential Chelsea Clinton run for for the House, which we've heard some rumblings of, I'm not expecting any bombshell confessions from Hillary Clinton. And whether it's because she's not going to confess or because she has nothing to confess, I know that different people in our audience have different views about that, but I would not hold my breath waiting for major Hillary confessions. Another allegation from the David Pakman Reddit discussion forum is that I need to stop siding with the corrupt DNC. One user on our Reddit discussion forum said, David, have you had a chance recently to look at your like to dislike ratio on your YouTube videos or the comments, particularly on your siding with the CIA on the Russian hacking? Yes, there are some trolls, but there are many fans like myself who just plainly don't understand your point of view as of late. I want to say I love your show and have been a fan for a while, but I'm noticing that no matter the argument, if it's against the Democratic Party, you write it off as not true or fake news. I disagree with the premise here. I don't know how anyone could see any of the critiques and criticisms that I did of what happened in Trump versus Clinton in 2016. I've been incredibly critical of the DNC. I've been criticizing the DNC all along for having their hands on the scale in a way that was both anti-democratic and pragmatically unsound in terms of supporting Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary. I again disagree with the premise. I think you can only come away with this point of view, as I said in the comments, because I participate in these discussions on Reddit, you could only really come away with this point of view if you've not been paying attention to the show or have been only cherry picking what you pay attention to. Jumping Jim Farmer on our Reddit discussion forum asked about a student membership price, wondering if there was a code for student membership. Yeah, there is indeed. I mean, it's not specifically a student membership price, but we have a coupon code, I voted 17. It's all one word and all lowercase. And we want membership support. Membership support is the #1 funding source for the show, but I'm not looking to break the bank for people who can't afford the normal prices. So the coupon code, I voted 17, which will work for any of the membership levels at davidpakman.com/membership, that will give you a major discount, and consider it a student discount price. It's really just a discount price for whoever needs it or wants it. And then lastly, a viewer starting a discussion on Reddit saying, so I finally got around to listening to the Pakman Drunken Peasant's appearance. I think David did a pretty good job representing a normal, non-strawman progressive. He should definitely appear on more centrist, right-leaning podcasts because he made very compelling reasons to vote and defended his viewpoints very well, and the individual is also linking to my appearance on the Drunken Peasants. Yeah, interestingly enough, David Pakman Show producer Pat Ford actually was the catalyst for getting me on Drunken Peasants, suggesting it, and then actually making the booking happen, and a lot of people responding positively to it, although I'm not sure that I would call the Drunken Peasants center-right. I think that they are sort of generally left, sort of libertarian oriented. That's the impression I got from talking to them. So in any case, join the conversation, davidpakman.com/Reddit, subscribe free there, suggest topics for the show, whatever makes sense to you. Reddit is sort of a pretty good place for any of it. As if it wasn't already obvious, Newt Gingrich has now admitted that Donald Trump is not draining the swamp. Now, I know many of our viewers and listeners will hear me say that and they'll say, well, obviously, David. And indeed, the entire draining the swamp meme was just like most things in Donald Trump's campaign, just for show, just to bamboozle easily influenced voters. Trump campaigned on he's going to come in as the outsider to Washington and clean up Washington and get rid of special interests. Instead, he stacked his team with the likes of former Goldman Sachs people, which I'll get into in more detail, but maybe most notably Goldman Sachs banker Steven Mnuchin, who is going to be the Treasury Secretary. He's brought in Exxon plutocrat-in-chief CEO Rex Tillerson to be Secretary of State. And now, according to Newt Gingrich, the entire draining of the swamp thing, that was just something for the campaign. Gingrich, the former House Speaker, telling NPR's Morning Edition that I'm told he now just disclaims that. He actually put out a tweet on December 18th, saying, "The alligators are unhappy about draining the swamp. That is the explanation for the nonsense about subverting the electoral college." And a lot of people responding and saying, whoa, 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 wait a second. There is no draining of the swamp happening. And indeed, Newt Gingrich telling NPR's Morning Edition, Trump now says the entire draining the swamp thing, it was cute, but he just doesn't want to use it anymore. Gingrich told NPR that he has noticed the post-election change in Trump's attitude to some issues, including the entire lock her up, investigate, and jail Hillary Clinton. That was a primary theme in Trump campaign events. Trump now has admitted, yeah, actually, that was not something that I was really interested in doing. It's something that worked really well during the campaign, but now we don't care about it. Gingrich said, maybe he feels that as president, as the next president of the United States, that he should be marginally more dignified than talking about alligators in swamps. Obviously, that's bogus because on so many levels, Trump has been no more dignified. If you've watched his Twitter account, he clearly has been no more dignified. No, no, no. This was just another one of these meaningless campaign slogans meant to bamboozle voters. Not shocking to me, probably not shocking to many of the people in our audience. I don't know that I've seen a presidential campaign that ended up having such little connection to what ultimately were revealed as the real plans of the administration. Lock Hillary up. Oh no, that was for the campaign. We don't actually care about that now. Drain the swamp. Actually fill it with former Goldman Sachs people. Bring back coal jobs. Actually, that's not really going to work because of natural gas prices. Send all the illegal immigrants back to Mexico. Well, actually, Trump's real plan will see fewer deportations than we've seen under the Obama administration. And of course, build a wall in Mexico will pay for it, just not going to happen. Now, let's dig in more specifically to Goldman Sachs. I've spoken about this in pieces before. I want to dedicate a little bit of time to it. Goldman Sachs. Donald Trump ran against Hillary Clinton's perceived coziness with Wall Street. That very acutely included investment bank Goldman Sachs. Trump slammed Hillary Clinton the entire campaign, during debates even, for her connections to Goldman Sachs. He slammed Hillary Clinton for giving speeches to Goldman Sachs. And now Trump is hiring the people who hired Hillary Clinton to give those speeches. You'll remember that it wasn't just through the Hillary Clinton insults that Trump slammed Goldman Sachs. Trump also slammed Goldman Sachs during the Republican primary, criticizing Ted Cruz for having taken a loan from Goldman Sachs, saying, I know the guys at Goldman Sachs, they have total control over Cruz, just like they have total control over Hillary Clinton. Wow, really sharp, pointed critiques. And it seemed almost like it was going both ways, because you'll remember that in September, Goldman Sachs banned certain employees from donating to Donald Trump's campaign. It seemed official. Trump is anti-Goldman. Goldman doesn't want employees at a certain level donating to Donald Trump, period. And then we had Trump's final pitch to voters. Trump actually used an image of Lloyd Blankfein in a TV ad to argue that insiders from Wall Street had ruined the lives of ordinary Americans to enrich themselves. Wow, very Bernie Sanders-like, very populist sounding, except now the Trump swamp is being filled with Goldman Sachs veterans. We have Goldman Sachs's Gary Cohn, who is going to be heading up Trump's Economic Council. We have Goldman Sachs's Steve Mnuchin, who is going to be heading up Trump's Secretary Department. And then, of course, we have climate science denier Anthony Scaramucci, who is a former Goldman Sachs guy and a key transition member for Trump. What is more globalist than Goldman Sachs? Of course, globalism that Trump and his cohorts like Alex Jones and other conspiracy theorists deplored. And then we have Wilbur Ross, who will be Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary, worth nearly $3 billion, and while not as closely connected to Goldman Sachs, made a ton of money with the exact same types of activities that Trump absolutely slammed during the campaign. Oh, and Steve Bannon, former Goldman Sachs banker. Now, there's always a defense from the Trumpists and from Trump. And usually those defenses require the suspension of disbelief. Now, the new party line is, according to the alt-rightists and the Trumpists, it's, oh, these people that Trump is hiring that he used to say were really bad, they're smart businessmen. And when you bring in people who are not the political status quo, you're going to have people that maybe have done some things as really astute and smart, shrewd business people that some of us might not like, but they're going to be part of making America great again. The swamp is not being drained, ladies and gentlemen. Repeal Obamacare, it's a disaster. Actually, many of those provisions are good. Flip-flop. Prosecute and jail Hillary Clinton. Flip-flop, that was just something for the campaign. Don't care about that now. Make America great again because Hillary was the Goldman Sachs candidate. Multiple Goldman Sachs people brought on to Trump's administration. You've been bamboozled, Trump supporters. I hate to break it to you. Join us on Facebook. Give us a like, facebook.com/David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Just a reminder, I have been doing sporadic Facebook live streams, and I hope you will join me on Facebook Live. I take questions, I'll talk about stories we didn't get to on the show, I'll preview upcoming shows. It's all happening on Facebook Live, facebook.com/David Pakman Show. Quick update on the Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign. We are attempting to raise $60,000 by midnight on the day of President Donald Trump's inauguration. You can read about the campaign and donate at davidpakman.com/donate. We are very quickly approaching the $10,000 mark, moving the campaign into 5 digits. We have also passed the 250 donor mark, over 250 individual donors having donated at this point. We have all sorts of great perks available. The perks start at just $9 donations. The most popular perk so far is David Pakman Show bumper stickers, although, but viewers have confirmed that my suspicions are right. Many of those bumper stickers will be going not onto actual car bumpers, but onto laptops, backpacks, and refrigerators, and that's all great. It's called the bumper sticker, but with peace and love, you put it wherever you want. The most popular perk so far, the bumper sticker. Second most popular perk is the autographed 2017 David Pakman Show calendar. I've not mentioned the calendar for a little bit, and you can check it out at davidpakman.com/donate. This is a 2017 calendar with all original artwork created by David Pakman Show fan Dan Burke, who is just an awesome artist. It's sort of comic book, coloring book themed, and you will see not only me, but so many of your favorite and most hated politicians, I guess we could say, in the artwork. That's the second most popular perk so far through the campaign. Third most popular perk is the David Pakman Show logo t-shirt, followed by the David Pakman Show logo hoodie sweatshirt. But we've recently added a custom exclusive Patriot Mail shirt as a perk for the Indiegogo campaign, and that is very, very quickly surging in the ranks. I would assume that the Patriot Mail shirt and the established in 2005 shirt will soon make it into the top perks. Even if you can only donate $1 or $2, please do it. Every donation makes a difference. We are looking to hire a progressive engagement coordinator to organize and coordinate progressive actions on issues and candidates that matter. We are looking to also have that coordinator work with or organize multiple independent progressive shows to coordinate activism and really increase the impact of our efforts. Now that the official electoral college voting has been done, It's going to be President Donald, and we need to be united and coordinated. We're also going to be making some upgrades to the David Pakman Show studio. I'm not missing from the studio today because the studio has fallen apart or anything like that. I am broadcasting remotely because I've got some family business out in Western Massachusetts. But needless to say, we have some major plans as part of the fundraiser for the David Pakman Show studio and a lot of other great stuff, including getting the show on Amazon Prime. So please, donations of all amounts welcome, whether it's $1 or whether it's $499, which is currently the top donation that we've seen from a longtime viewer named Joshua, or whether it's more than $499, raising the bar on the biggest donation. Every single donation is much appreciated. And last thing on this, and then I'll move on. Anybody who makes a donation of any amount to the campaign will qualify for a half-price David Pakman Show membership. After you donate, within 24 to 48 hours, you'll get an email with a special code offering you the opportunity to get a membership at half price, and that even a $1 donation will qualify you for that. Okay, there is a regular and constant argument against increases to the minimum wage, typically from like the supply side economics types, or the people that at least think they understand what that is. If you pay more, it hurts employment, you reduce the number of jobs, and eventually the total demand for labor actually goes down and you hurt the economy. This is an argument that doesn't make sense for a number of reasons. Number one, it leaves no room for other variations in the labor force. And number two, we've also seen anecdotally that this doesn't actually happen. We've been covering what's been going on in San Francisco County, California for years now, where they were way ahead of the rest of the country in raising the minimum wage there, above and beyond even what many states currently have as the minimum wage. They were years ahead of it. This applied also to fast food, which is one of those industries that's often sort of considered to be, as soon as you raise minimum wage, it really hurts fast food employees and fast food restaurants. No negative repercussions. Now, you could still say, well, okay, David, fine. It's not true that necessarily you hurt jobs by raising the minimum wage, and it's not true that necessarily raising the minimum wage hurts fast food, but that's just San Francisco. San Francisco is a very high income area. It's a very unique situation where it's a high cost of living, but also very, very wealthy area. You need to look elsewhere. Well, fortunately for us, that's exactly what the Center for Economic and Policy Research did. They analyzed a report by the White House Council of Economic Advisors on the effects of raising the minimum wage beyond the federal minimum. Okay, so they say, okay, here is where we are based on the federal minimum wage of $7.25. Let's see what impact on employment and the economy going beyond that federal minimum has. The researchers found that the 18 states plus Washington, D.C., that increased wages beyond the federal minimum wage in 2014, number one, it led to low-income workers benefiting. That obviously makes sense. But it also saw no depression of jobs available to low-income workers. There was no additional economic harm found to those increases above and beyond the federal minimum wage. This actually increased average wages in low-wage jobs, but it also reversed a trend generally of falling real wages that we saw. And we did not see a negative impact on jobs. The CEA, for those who say, hey, it's a White House council, the CEA doesn't have its own data. They use Bureau of Labor Statistics data for workers in leisure and hospitality. And I've talked many times before, if you don't believe the Bureau of Labor Statistics data under President Obama, then you actually can't really argue that unemployment is high or low, because it's all being compared to Bureau of Labor Statistics data under other presidents. And it's very hard to argue that only under President Obama is that data not trustworthy. So those who argue against, for example, safety net programs or raising the minimum wage or having a basic income, they often go beyond the economic argument. Many of them say, the problem, David, is not the economic argument. Fine, maybe these programs, raising the minimum wage, welfare programs, it's not bad for the economy. But we can't just be handing things out to people. And this gets us back to this concept, which George Lakoff talked about quite a bit, of strict father morality, which is when as progressives we identify a Republican position, we analyze it and we say, hey, you know what? It turns out that even though Republicans say they're concerned with fiscal conservatism, they support a policy that is not fiscally conservative or it's not pro-business. Layer two is fundamentally strict father morality and the idea of people only having what they, quote, deserve, according to conservatives, will actually override the supposedly important principle of fiscal conservatism and making good economic decisions. Last thing on this. Anytime we talk about raising the minimum wage, some people will write into me and they'll say, David, if raising the minimum wage is good, just raise it to $200 an hour. Then everybody will have tons of money. Do not fall for that red herring. That red herring ignores that no one is calling for raising the minimum wage to $200 an hour. When we talk about $12, $15, or $18 an hour, we're talking about minimum wages in a range that can be justified by changes to cost of living and increases in productivity and what it takes to earn a living wage in different parts of the United States. That is what is called reducto ad absurdum. When you say, well, if it's good to raise it from 12 to 13, raising it to 200 must be really good. No, no one is arguing that that is what should be done. No serious economists are saying that. You have to base the minimum wage on the economic realities of a living wage and what would be an equilibrium wage in our economy. The $200 minimum wage red herring, you have to be ready to debunk that because it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Let's take a break. Still plenty more coming up. Glad you're with me on this Thursday.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
We've covered the many flip-flops and reversals and back and forths on countless issues by President-elect Donald Trump. This includes Obamacare. This includes deportation forces. This includes punishment for women who have abortions and everything in between. One thing that I have to credit Donald Trump with, and I said it on the show yesterday, he has been very consistent about liking strongman authoritarian dictators of all kinds. He praised Vladimir Putin during the presidential campaign. He had this weird sort of indirect praise for North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. He had praise for authoritarian extremist Turkish President Erdogan for, quote, turning the coup around, a coup that has been debunked as actually even being a real coup attempt. He has reportedly recently told, as I discussed with you yesterday, Filipino President Rodrigo Duterte that he supports his violent vigilante murder campaign against not convicted, but suspected drug dealers and drug addicts. And he said many times during the 2016 presidential campaign and before that while Saddam Hussein was a, quote, bad guy, he did praise Saddam Hussein for being an efficient killer of terrorists. Not totally untrue, but not exactly the type of thing you want to be saying while running for president of the United States. Well, we have now heard from former Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein's daughter, Ragad Hussein, and she has praised Donald Trump. Apparently, some of the fondness here goes both ways. Let's take a look at a recent quote to CNN from Ragad Hussein, who said, "This man has just arrived to the leadership, but from what is apparent, this man has a high level of political sensibility. That is vastly different than the one who preceded him. He exposed the mistakes of the others, specifically in terms of Iraq, which means he is very aware of the mistakes made in Iraq and what happened to my father." Trump exposed the mistakes of Iraq. No, Trump had a very coy way of self-aggrandizing himself and his foresight through campaign propaganda. And that seems to have actually worked on Saddam Hussein's daughter. Trump kept saying during the campaign, "I've always been against the war in Iraq." Well, that was demonstrably untrue, as we exposed during the campaign. We also have exposed that Donald Trump is totally clueless on Middle East policy. The guy doesn't know anything at all. And as I read about this, I was fascinated that not only did Trumpists who ended up voting for Trump, American citizens, fall for Trump's simplistic propaganda on so many of these issues, even Saddam Hussein's daughter seems to have fallen for Trump's propaganda. Of course, she can't vote in the United States, unless you believe Trump that tons of people who aren't authorized to vote in the US voted for Hillary Clinton, although it sounds like Ragad Hussein would have more likely voted for Donald Trump. There's one other similarity I noticed, actually, between Donald Trump and Saddam Hussein, which is if you've seen the recent pictures of Trump's Trump Tower penthouse apartment, Trump and Saddam Hussein both seem to share a very strong predilection for gold-plated furniture and gold on absolutely anything that you can put it on. So the back and forth continues, two-way fondness between Donald Trump and the associates of and actual authoritarian strongmen dictators. And no exception here, yet another one, and I'm still waiting to see when Rodrigo Duterte is going to show up at the White House and maybe reminisce with Donald Trump about when he personally would get on a motorcycle and go kill suspected drug dealers as mayor of Davao in the Philippines. We haven't talked about autonomous vehicles for a while. We've talked a lot about the coming AI revolution, but we have news out of Michigan specifically in terms of autonomous vehicles. Michigan has approved a series of bills which will allow driverless cars with no passengers and with no steering wheels and without passengers to be on public roadways. And this is Governor Rick Snyder, who has signed 4 bills as part of what is being called an autonomous vehicle legislative package, whereas before you could only do testing of the vehicles by manufacturers. He now is joining the primary bill sponsor, Senator Mike Cowell, as well as executives from General Motors and Ford. And as I told you earlier in the year, Pittsburgh has started live tests of driverless Uber taxis. And this is a joint sort of venture with Ford Fusions that are Uber vehicles. They still require having, obviously, a steering wheel and someone sitting, a live driver sitting in the driver's seat, ready to take over if anything happens. But we're seeing legislation expand to many states now. 16 states introduced legislation related to autonomous cars in 2015. 12 states did in 2014. And since 2012, we've seen some kind of autonomous vehicle registration in 34 states and DC. We also saw a few months ago the National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration create some guidelines for car makers which talk about sort of frameworks for what should be in autonomous vehicle legislation. There's one bill that, for example, exempts mechanics from damage to vehicles that results from repairs, assuming that they were made with manufacturer guidelines. And this is starting to sort of fill out the lack of coherent law around liability and autonomous vehicles. Who is responsible if an autonomous vehicle does X, Y, or Z? Is it the company that designed the logic that is followed by the autonomous vehicle? Is it the individuals at the company that designed the logic? Very, very unlikely that it would go that way. And this applies to mechanics and repairs and so many other areas. I still find it very funny that we still have people in our audience who will contact me anytime we talk about autonomous cars. This has been happening for years. We've been talking about autonomous cars off and on for years. I get angry emails from people saying, David, it's not happening. It's never going to happen. We're not going to have autonomous cars. At one point, it was sort of being unwilling to see the trends. Now it's just straight up ignoring of reality. There are autonomous vehicles already operating. We have a driverless truck corridor in Nevada in the United States that is being tested with autonomous large transportation vehicles, big rigs as they're often known. It's happening, period. And at this point, to deny the reality, it's sort of like denying the reality that automation is going to kill jobs and pretending like everything's going to remain the same. We would all be so much better off if we accepted the reality and started thinking about the big questions that these new realities will raise. The biggest hurdle, what will be the biggest hurdle for autonomous cars? Will it be human acceptance? Will it be the technological issues that I generally believe are going to be worked out? Is it going to be lobbying groups that are very much against it? Probably some combination of all of these things. I do have a voicemail number that you can call any time of day. The number is 219-2-DAVID-P. Let's take a listen to a voicemail that came in yesterday.
Well, apparently in rural, hard right country, you have to approve of Russia in order to be a patriot. That looks like where it's going. I'm really scared too. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that is taking it a little too far in terms of you have to approve of Russia to be a patriot, but it is stunning how in 4 years we went from Mitt Romney, the Republican candidate for president, says Russia and Putin are our biggest geopolitical foes, and Republicans by and large agreeing with that, to Russia hacked our election according to the CIA and FBI, Trump praises Putin, Putin praises Trump, Rex Tillerson, the incoming Secretary of State, major friend of Putin and of Russia, business deals, etc., and now Republicans saying, hey, maybe it's good to be friendly with Russia. Russia may not actually be that bad. It is stunning, the reversal that we have seen. On the bonus show today, a new study confirms what many of us suspected: lurking on Facebook makes people miserable. John Kasich has expanded concealed carry in daycares and colleges in Ohio, and a potential aerosol that might cool the earth. Very, very interesting stories on today's bonus show. Of course, you can access the bonus show instantly by becoming a David Pakman Show member at davidpakman.com/membership. If prices are too high, use coupon code IVoted17. And please, please, please check out our crowdfunding campaign at davidpakman.com/donate. Even if you can only donate a couple bucks, please do. I really appreciate the 250 plus donors that have already contributed.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.